Is conflict inevitable between the US and China? The rhetoric from Washington and Beijing has taken on a chilling tone lately. Talk of a new Cold War is in the air as tensions escalate on multiple fronts. This begs the uneasy question: are the United States and China inexorably sliding towards a direct military clash? Is the drumbeat of war becoming audible? This is arguably the most pressing geopolitical issue of our times. First, let's survey the regional hotspots where skirmishes or miscalculations could spark open conflict. The Taiwan Strait remains the most dangerous flashpoint by far. Beijing claims Taiwan as its sovereign territory and has not ruled out using force to unify the island. Chinese jets and warships are menacing Taiwan at unprecedented levels. This crisis zone remains fraught with risks of inadvertent escalation. In the South China Sea, Beijing continues aggressive construction of military bases on disputed reefs and shoals, flouting international law. Close encounters between Chinese naval vessels and U.S. warships conducting freedom of navigation operations raise the risks of accidental clashes spiraling out of control. The Korean Peninsula is another perennial hotspot. Any collapse of the nuclear-armed Kim Jong-un regime could see U.S. and Chinese forces racing to fill the vacuum, bringing them into direct confrontation. There are other regional sparks that could ignite superpower conflict, like a crisis over the self-governing island of Kinmen just off China's coast. The list of potential flashpoints in the Asia-Pacific is long and growing. But do Washington and Beijing have crisis communication channels to prevent flare-ups from turning into open war? The US and China signed a Memorandum of Understanding back in 2008 to establish an emergency defense telephone link. But it was briefly suspended in 2021 and lacks regular usage. Now look at the military postures of both countries in the region. The navies have an annual military maritime consultative agreement meeting to discuss safe conduct at sea. But coordination remains very limited. Unlike during the Cold War, there are no sustained diplomatic mechanisms for managing potential crises involving third countries like Taiwan. The US still retains military primacy in the Western Pacific. Current America's regional force posture includes 28,500 troops in South Korea, 50,000 in Japan, and a major naval and air presence in Guam, as well as rotating forces through the Philippines. Powerful U.S. aircraft carrier strike groups conduct regular patrols through the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait as shows of force. The U.S. also has extensive defense partnerships with Taiwan, Japan, Australia, and others. Washington remains the preeminent military power in Asia presently. However, China has dramatically expanded its military capabilities and reach to challenge U.S. dominance. The PLA Navy has grown to over 400 ships and submarines, surpassing the U.S. Navy in size, as well as 1,000 land-based missiles able to strike U.S. bases across the region. Beijing now boasts 2 fully operational aircraft carriers, compared to America's 11 carriers. China plans to expand its carrier fleet to at least 6 by 2035. The PLA rocket force has also amassed over 2,000 ballistic and cruise missiles able to hit U.S. bases as far away as Guam. Regional U.S. bases could be overwhelmed by missile swarms in a conflict. China's prowess in asymmetric capabilities like anti-ship ballistic missiles presents major challenges for traditional U.S. military strengths. In many ways, Washington's long-standing supremacy in the Western Pacific is increasingly contested by China's military advances. While the U.S. retains crucial advantages, a regional conflict would be far costlier than decades past. This could affect risk calculations and incentives for restraint on both sides. What about the rhetoric and public moods in both nations? Is compromise still possible politically? As China has grown more powerful, President Xi Jinping has explicitly stated the U.S.-led regional order must end and that China's rejuvenation is unstoppable. This assertive rhetoric alarms many neighbors. U.S. leaders have begun framing China as America's only true global competitor and the pacing threat for U.S. military planning. Domestically, public sentiment has also hardened. Under Xi, nationalism and anti-U.S. sentiment have surged in China. State media portrays the U.S. as a hostile nation seeking to contain China's rise, invoking a sense of victimhood. In the U.S., polls show negative views of China have soared in the last decade across both political parties. More Americans support actively countering China's rise. Nationalistic emotions will further constrain room for de-escalation on both sides. This brings us to the crucial issue: despite the risks, just how likely is war between the major powers? From a rational perspective, direct military conflict still appears highly remote. For all the tensions, the $700 billion trade relationship and global economic impacts mean an outbreak of war would be economically disastrous for China and the US. Their vast nuclear arsenals mean neither side can realistically hope to deal a knockout blow or completely neutralize the other's population centers in the way of World War II. Modern weapons like hypersonic missiles also compress decision-making timelines to minutes, making escalation control almost impossible. The threshold for employing nuclear weapons would be quickly crossed in wartime. As such, no rational leader in Beijing or Washington would make a deliberate choice for war between nuclear powers with catastrophic consequences. However, there are real risks of inadvertent escalation through misperceptions, miscalculations, and cascading reactions. A minor clash over Taiwan, the South China Sea, or Korea could quickly balloon out of control if cool heads don't prevail. Signaling messages could be misread. Complex automated weapons systems could also malfunction and cause accidents during peacetime that spiral into combat before leaders can intervene. So while deliberate war appears hugely dangerous and improbable, the risks of uncontrolled escalation through some catalyst crisis or accident cannot be ignored. And once bullets start flying, it can be impossible to stop the momentum. If traditional ground or naval war seems remote, what about non-kinetic conflict in domains like cyber or economic statecraft? Both nations are expanding their cyber forces and capabilities rapidly. Hacking critical infrastructure could give either side leverage in a crisis. The potential for cyber-enabled escalation is rising quickly. On economics, the decoupling push in movements like Make in India, reshoring supply chains, and banning tech giants like Huawei signal a chilling of financial and commercial ties. Interdependence mattered for stability. Some describe this emergent scenario as a Cold War 2.0, characterized by cyber attacks, information warfare, economic coercion, and proxy conflicts rather than direct military clashes between the giants. But Cold Wars can quickly heat up when crises strike or miscalculations occur. The absence of diplomatic guardrails today compared to the Cold War era is concerning. Without clear rules of engagement, hybrid warfare can be unpredictable. So with geopolitical tensions approaching the inflection point, how can peace be preserved between the superpowers? And existing arms control mechanisms like strategic stability talks should be reinvigorated to enhance transparency, communication, and nuclear restraint between the militaries. We stand at a pivotal juncture in US-China relations, teetering ominously on the knife's edge between competition and catastrophe. Though neither seeks open war, escalatory momentum could yet suck the nations into conflict absent urgent efforts to strengthen communication and restraint at the highest levels. Both sides must understand that so-called Thucydides traps are not preordained but created by short-sighted choices. Share your perspectives below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.